Near Antarctica, a team of conservationists removed every wildcat from an island to save its seabirds. It nearly destroyed the entire island instead. Picture what that actually looked like on the ground. A hillside just gives way one day. Not because of an earthquake, not a storm, but because there aren't enough roots left in the dirt to hold it together anymore. So it slides all at once, tons and tons of it, straight down into the sea, and it takes seabird burrows with it. Chicks buried alive in nests their parents dug specifically to keep them safe. This didn't happen once. It happened again and again for years on Macquarie Island, which is honestly one of the most protected pieces of land on the planet. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's the only place on Earth where royal penguins breed. And for a while in the 2000s, it was quietly falling apart at the seams. There's a strange twist buried in all this. Nobody dumped chemicals here. There were no poachers, no factory spill, nothing like that. The people who caused this disaster were conservationists, trying to fix a completely different problem on an island that was already carrying 100 years of earlier mistakes. And their fix, which was smart, well-researched, and completely reasonable on paper, ended up making everything worse before anyone understood why. Stick with this one, because by the end, you'll see how taking a predator off an island can actually be more dangerous than leaving it there, and how the real solution turned out to be something almost nobody would have guessed. To make sense of any of this, we have to rewind more than 100 years, back to a time when nobody was protecting Macquarie Island at all. The island sits roughly halfway between Tasmania and Antarctica, out in some of the roughest ocean on the planet. Windswept, mostly treeless, barely 20 miles long, and somehow still stacked with wildlife. Millions of seabirds nest there every year, along with tens of thousands of elephant seals lounging around like they own the place. Sealers found the island in the early 1800s, and they weren't exactly there for the scenery. They came to hunt, and like sailors tended to do wherever they went, they brought animals along with them, cats mostly, to keep the rats down on their ships. Later on, in the 1870s, people released rabbits too, on purpose this time, as a handy source of food for anyone who got stranded there. Nobody was thinking about food webs or ecosystems. They were thinking about dinner. And that one small decision is the reason everything else in this story happens. The rabbits, though, found a place with basically unlimited food and nothing that had ever learned to be scared of them. So their numbers climbed for a century, slowly at first and then not slowly at all. By the 1970s, more than 100,000 rabbits were crammed onto an island that really wasn't built to hold that many. They chewed the grass down to bare dirt. They wiped out plants that only exist on this one island, some of them taller than a person. And once the plants disappeared, the ground itself started to fail, because that's what happens when nothing is left to hold soil in place. Hillsides opened up. Seabird colonies that had nested in the same spots for thousands of years lost their homes almost overnight. Scientists fought back the only way they really could. In the 1980s, they introduced a rabbit virus called myxoma, built specifically to knock the population down. And for a while, it worked beautifully. Rabbit numbers dropped from over 100,000 to around 10,000. For the first time in 100 years, the plants actually had a chance to grow back. But rabbits weren't the only problem on this island. And the next big decision, the one that everybody assumed was the responsible move, is where the story really turns. Cats had been living wild on Macquarie Island since the 1800s too, and they weren't just hunting rabbits. They were killing native seabirds by the thousands, because those birds had zero instinct to fear a four-legged hunter. Nothing like a cat had ever existed on this island before people showed up. Conservationists made the call that seemed obvious. Get rid of the cats, save the birds. Simple enough, right? The last cat on Macquarie Island was removed in the year 2000. It was treated as a genuine win, the kind of story that gets a round of applause at a conservation conference, and for a little while, it really did look like it had worked. Then, the rabbits noticed. With their one real predator gone and the old rabbit virus slowly losing its punch, the rabbit population didn't just recover, it exploded. By 2006, numbers had rocketed back past 100,000. Some counts put it closer to 300,000 on an island where, just a few years earlier, the plants had finally started healing. Think of it like this. Imagine spending years bailing water out of a leaky boat, finally getting ahead of it, and then someone decides the bucket is the real problem and throws it overboard. That's roughly what happened here. The damage stacked up fast, and each piece made the next one worse. First, the tussock grass that had only just begun to recover got stripped bare again, even quicker than the first time around. Second, with no roots left to grip the soil, landslides started tearing open hillsides that had been stable for years. And third, which nobody really expected, those landslides started burying active seabird nests, not just damaging them, burying them completely, chicks and eggs and all, gone. There's a funny little wrinkle in all this. Some of the scientists studying the collapse weren't even totally convinced the cats had been holding the rabbits back in the first place. A few pointed out that rabbit numbers were already sky high back when cats were common on the island, well before the myxoma virus ever showed up. Maybe the cats were never doing that much heavy lifting against the rabbits at all, and it was really the fading rabbit virus that opened the floodgates. Either way, the timing lined up close enough that, at first glance, it looked exactly like cause and effect. A scientist named Dana Bergstrom, working with the Australian Antarctic Division, led the study that finally put a number on the whole mess. Her team's conclusion was blunt. Removing the cats, in their own words, had caused environmental devastation. Fixing it ended up costing about 24 million Australian dollars, which is almost exactly what had just been undone, along with years of conservation work that basically evaporated overnight. Sit with that for a second. The cats really were a genuine problem. Removing them was, on paper, the correct call. And it still nearly finished the island off, because nobody had fully accounted for what those cats had quietly been holding back the whole time. This is basically the textbook warning story now in conservation circles. You can't just pull one piece out of a broken system and assume the rest will sort itself out politely. Sometimes, the cure causes more damage than the disease ever did. By the mid-2000s, everyone working on Macquarie Island had run out of half measures. The virus had worn off. The cat removal had backfired. There was really only one option left, and it was a big one. Get rid of everything all at once. Planning for what eventually became the Macquarie Island Pest Eradication Project kicked off in 2007. This time, the target wasn't just rabbits. It was rabbits, rats, and mice, all together across the whole island in one single coordinated push. Miss even one pregnant female of any of those species, and the whole island could reset right back to square one. Helicopters handled the first big pass. Between 2010 and 2014, they dropped 250 tons of poison bait across every part of the island they could reach. That knocked the numbers down hard and fast. But it didn't quite finish the job, because with any aerial drop like that, a handful of survivors always find a way to slip through, tucked away somewhere no helicopter can see. The final stretch came down to something almost comically low-tech after all that machinery: dogs. Specially trained conservation dogs walked across the island for years alongside their handlers, sniffing out the last stragglers one at a time. A conservationist named Melissa Houghton worked with one of those dogs, a Labrador named Wags. In 2011, Wags found what turned out to be the very last rabbit on Macquarie Island. One dog, one nose, the final rabbit on an island that had outlasted every other method thrown at it for over a century. The whole project was declared a full success in April of 2014. Every last rabbit, rat, and mouse gone. It's still one of the biggest successful island pest eradications ever pulled off anywhere on the planet. Scientists brace themselves for a slow recovery, because ecosystems that take 100 years to break usually don't fix themselves in a hurry. That's just how it normally goes. Macquarie Island didn't seem to get the memo, and that matters more than it sounds like it should. Islands make up only about 5% of the Earth's land area, but they've been the site of roughly 60% of every recorded extinction since the year 1500. Small, cut-off ecosystems like this one are usually the most fragile places on the planet, not the fastest to heal. 10 years after Wags found that last rabbit, researchers went back to check in, and what they found genuinely surprised even the people who had run the whole project. Tussock grass, missing from huge stretches of the island for generations, was thriving again. Hillsides that used to be nothing but bare dirt and landslide scars were now covered in green. The tall island plants, the ones found nowhere else on Earth, were growing back in places nobody expected to see them return so soon. The seabirds noticed too. Species like the burrowing petrel, which had lost their nesting ground to landslides for years, started coming back to breed. 8 major seabird species tracked across the island have shown real, measurable growth since the eradication wrapped up, and most of them aren't even considered endangered in Australia anymore. The penguins, who were never quite as threatened by the rabbits directly, still ended up better off living on a healthier island around them. Macquarie Island still isn't completely finished healing. Gentoo penguins are declining for reasons nobody has figured out yet, and a single pregnant rat in the wrong cargo hold could undo a decade of work in one season. The job isn't over. It's just winning right now. But step back and look at the whole shape of this story, and it says something bigger than just one island. Humans brought in animals without understanding what they were dropping into the mix. Then, humans tried to fix it by pulling out just one piece of the damage, and that fix nearly finished the job the original mistake had started. In the end, it took a full, brutal, coordinated effort, helicopters and poison, and eventually one very good dog, to undo what 100 years of smaller decisions had built up. Picture that hillside from the beginning again, the one sliding into the ocean, burying birds that never saw it coming. That hillside is green now, whole. The kind of green that wasn't supposed to come back this quickly, according to almost everyone who studied it. That leaves one real question worth chewing on. If a smart, well-researched decision, removing a predator to protect native birds, could nearly wreck an entire island as a side effect, how many other obvious fixes happening right now on islands nobody's really watching might be quietly setting up the next Macquarie Island? Type fixed if you think humans are finally getting good at this. Type lucky if you think Macquarie just barely survived its own rescue. This is Hidden Latitude, the stories everyone else assumed were already finished.